Delhi goes to vote on 4th December. We get to choose a new government for the national capital, which some say holds the maximum potential for urbanization, industrialization and growth. But Delhi also has to manage the huge increase in influx of population. The last census figures of 2011 showed Delhi's population at 1.67 crore. Between 2001 and 11, Delhi's population grew by over 21%. This is much higher than the national average of 17%. And imagine this, in another 7 years or by 2021, Delhi's population will breach the 2 crore mark. It will stand at a staggering 2.36 crore. And that's how many people the city will have to accommodate and provide livable homes to, with basic amenities of water, sanitation and transport. 2.36 crores is a staggering number, and so is the task of making Delhi a global city. Is it doable? Delhi Master Plan 2021, the blueprint prepared by the government and policy makers, thinks it is. So today, that's what we will thrash out with the experts who've read, reviewed, dissected Delhi's master plan. What does this master plan hold? Will it pave the way for the right development of Delhi or not? My guest today, Rajiv Talwar, Group Executive Director, DLF Limited. Also with us, Ramesh Menon, Director, Certis Realty Limited. He's also a land expert. Kuldeep Chawla, Managing Partner of Sama Capital Advisors. And of course, Dr. PSN Rao, Professor Housing and Real Estate and Coordinator Research, SPA. All right, gentlemen, thanks very much for joining in. And we'll keep flashing the 5 big goals of Delhi Master Plan. But I think the biggest goal, Rajiv, is to provide an accommodation to the additional population that we are talking about. The plan says 16 lakh new homes, but if we look at the gap, it's 24 lakh homes. So where is the gap? I mean, is it beginning? Is the master plan beginning with a gap itself?
Yes, it is, and I think they're addressing it. Lots of new areas have been opened up, primarily in north, west, and a little bit to south of Delhi, but in South Delhi. But the increase in FAR, the land pooling policy, for instance, or the farm policy, which is going to allow you smaller places, and maybe going vertical, which has been accepted now, that at least we should have high density development in areas which are being opened up afresh.
Okay.
And hopefully, therefore, low density development in already established colonies, which I think are bursting, which is what people say, that is there space, is there water, is there electricity, is there road space. I think that primarily pertains to colonies which are well established, which were done in the good old 50s and 60s and 70s, meant really for ground plus first. Now, of course, ground plus 3 are allowed. Parking on stilts is compulsory, and I think that's a major problem. Upgradation of infrastructure will take place, and so will, I'm sure, water, electricity, which have already made huge strides in the decade before this, and therefore should augment. Do you think it's made huge strides? Oh yes.
In water, sanitation and all the incumbent facilities that you require for that ground plus 3 and the new areas we look at?
Well, that's true. Ground plus 3, sanitation has been taken care of, because each one of these is going a floor up. There are established regularized colonies where you have to provide sanitation facilities. Similarly, electricity, I think, yes, privatizations helped a lot in Delhi. We really don't run our generators in our private sector colonies as much as we used to do before. And definitely roads have been added, whether it's flyovers, whether it's roads, whether it's the beginning of elevated roads, which will come about more and more in this town. But the real test lies in keeping this low density development in established colonies, opening up the new ones to high density vertical civilization, which India has the capacity to do, and I'm sure will happen over the next 20 years.
So let's then examine that very next big point which we have, is to take Delhi high-rise. Kuldeep, come in here and tell me, we still don't have clarity on that. We're talking about FAR of 400 compared to, let's say, 100 and 150 for redevelopment in the existing parts of Delhi. New, we are talking about 400. Is that enough? Do we have any clarity on FSI, and how are we going to go about it?
I think there is some clarity that has emerged, particularly in terms of some of the Gazette notifications that have been issued over the last couple of months. And for your viewers, I think I'd like to clarify that a 400 FAR is applicable on that parcel of land which the developer gets back. If you were to look at it on a composite basis, which is what is the total land that a developer gives up to the government, then he gets back between 48 and 60%.
Okay.
On that, actually the effective FAR, is less than 1.5. So if you look at it, the density of development is high only in relation, to repeat myself, on that parcel which gets developed.
Okay.
Which from a planning point of view is very good, because the balance area that you give to the government then does planning to provide all institutional facilities.
Right.
So all your schools, colleges, offices, transportation, parks, fire stations, social and other amenities that are necessary for the development of an overall area get built on that portion.
Okay, so let me just toss this question. So the private developers are supposed to do something, the government is supposed to do its bit. Clearly DDA is not going to acquire any more land, which of course has been a big failed model in Delhi. Ramesh, come in here. The PPP that we talk about, it looks great on paper, but is it as good as it seems?
No, two things. It's not that DDA won't acquire any land. DDA won't do any large-scale acquisition. As in the last acquisition that they did was for Dwarka and Rohini, where they went ahead and bought many hectares of land and then took almost 30-35 years to develop that area. Yes, the DDA would acquire land for specific purposes only, mostly under the tenets that the LARR bill defines.
Okay.
Now, as for the PPP, it's my personal considered opinion that it's a very misunderstood concept, right? Where till date, most PPP projects, the government at this stage still does not consider itself a partner in the venture, right? They are more like a grant-giving authority, a monitor of the progress of the project, but they do not visibly show any equity in the development of the project. So in that sense, the PPP, in what way or form would Delhi evolve in, we have no clue. There is an announcement of a Bapadola SEZ for IT, there is a Bapadola SEZ for gems and jewelry, but it hasn't really taken any shape per se as of now.
Okay.
So whatever the DDA acquired earlier, whether it is Rani Kheda or Kanjhavla, those villages, now the land is already transferred to DSIDC. Now whether DSIDC would evolve these projects under the PPP, I'm not at all sure about it.
Okay, so then let's go back to that basic question of land holdings and how they will be pooled. Dr. Rao, you've written several times about how urban land holding parcels should be brought together. Review the Delhi master plan for us, and the first step has already started, the process has started. Is this directionally the right way to go?
One of the most important things that has happened in the past is a major paradigm shift in the way in which we look at urban development in the case of Delhi, and I think this particular master plan, the third master plan as we call it, has actually brought about a major shift in the land policy in Delhi, because so far land was frozen and only the government could do the development. But now with major departures, number one, private parties, private entities, private landowners can do the development. The DDA is going to partner with the private landholders by pooling in the lands. Number two, higher densities, higher FAR is permitted. Number three, redevelopment is permitted. So I think these three major paradigm shifts that have occurred, I think it's a major departure from the past, and I think it's quite positive. It's more liberal and forward thinking, and I feel that if this is really taken forward to its logical conclusion, then I'm sure that we'll be able to make much better use of what we have in Delhi, because I think there are already 4 or 5 areas which have been identified, the P zone, the P2 zone, the N zone, the L zone, and so on. About 4 or 5 zones have already been identified for the new development to happen. So there are a large number of investors who've already purchased land, and they're willing to do the land pooling along with the DDA. But as rightly pointed out by Ramesh, I think it's very important that the government also has to do its bit, because the developers will certainly come in, but then if the government doesn't put the infrastructure in place, or if the metro lines are not extended on time, the water lines are not extended on time, then you're going to have serious problems, because these areas which are now being opened up, they are not going to be serviced on time, so then you'll have a problem there. So I think there's a lot of serious work that needs to be done by the government on its own side.
All right. So, let's just delve a little bit for our viewers who have been interested in all that's happening in real estate of the National Capital Region. Land pooling policy. This is, of course, this has replaced the present model of acquiring land by DDA. Now, what happens here is landowners, including farmers, can form associations and engage private builders to consolidate their land parcels for development. The policy lays down certain norms. These might be a bit too technical, so I'll skip them. They'll come up on your, graphics. But if you just look at a very, very interesting point in this is also contiguous or adjoining entire land will be surrendered first to DDA, and in return DDA will allot one single chunk on road. In lieu of the land that the DDA will keep, the authorities will develop external infrastructure like roads, sewer system, water, electricity supply, and that's what we've been talking about in terms of a public-private participation. And the most important thing, what are these 5 new zones or sub-cities that we are talking about, where development will be unleashed? Now, if you look at that map, and this map is going to come in front of you, it's earmarked land in North Delhi, Northwest Delhi, West and Southwest Delhi and South Delhi. Now, the plan basically says residential real estate development across all categories, plotted high-end and mid-end apartments and EWS within the city. The 5 sub-cities will be created on the lines of Rohini and Dwarka, and then of course we'll go on to what these zones are as we discuss and go through this most. South, now the big chunk of land, Ramesh, is the Northwest Delhi, isn't it? Next to Rohini, current metro rail connectivity, and you've got what, about 60,000 acres? 40,000 is in this area, isn't it? So this is the
now
big
this is
parcel,
about 13,975 hectares, so about 35,000 acres in the zone N,
right,
and close to about 9,000 hectares in zone P, 1 and 2 put together.
Okay.
So so it's a release of a large chunk of land, but if you look at the specific zones per se, P1 at best has about 2,000 hectares which can be developed, because the government owns a lot of land for industrial development and EWS. And P2, the net developable land for residential purposes, in our wisdom, cannot cross about 2,500 hectares. So it brings it down to N zone, which is critical, which has got about 19 villages unencumbered land which can be developed.
Okay.
Coming back to the factor of how it will be developed, it is adjacent to Rohini, so there is a situation where this can grow faster, but it is very dependent on how quickly the infrastructure can be rolled out into this zone by the government. For example, from the existing Rohini, the farthest point in this zone would be at best 10 kilometers. Now, if the government can lay the infrastructure at that pace, this development would be off the block very quickly. So it hinges a lot on the will at the political, administrative, and at the policy level, pertinent for the entire of Delhi.
Political will we'll get to know. First of all, we now going to get a new government. But Kuldeep, just tell us, I mean, in terms of the land pooling, aggregation of land, which we believe, a lot of investors are reading about it and they think there's a big money game there by getting into, this land aggregation and pooling business of real estate. Is that really so? I mean, what's happening on ground?
I think what's happening right now is people are trying to do 2 things. One, they're trying to estimate how long it will take, and B, in the true sense, many of them are speculating as to what the implementation plan and rollout of infrastructure is going to be, because that will determine the pace, scale and economics of development.
Okay.
In other words, we don't have clarity on the rollout or implementation plan. For example, not all areas can be developed simultaneously. It's both financially almost impossible and physically not possible in terms of the logistics. So therefore there has to be some roadmap of development. We have no clarity on that. The second and more fundamental issue that needs clarity is how will the land pooling actually happen? And For example,
I
if
thought
somebody
it was
doesn't
already
want...
clear. People were already
Well, in
beginning
theory it
to-
is clear. In theory it is clear. There are other examples that have taken place in other parts of the country. There are lessons to be learnt from that. You know, we're sponsoring a seminar on the 18th of this month, you know, that will get the policy makers and players together, you know, to focus on some of these implementation aspects. But the key issue on the implementation is, how will the land pooling actually happen in terms of, will I get land, where will it be, you know, what is the commitment of the government going to be, when will they get the trunk infrastructure there, you know, what will be the external and or internal development charges. There are many unanswered questions. We could do a full show on that.
Okay.
You know?
Rajiv, come in here. I mean, your company has in the past done a lot of land pooling through farmers and got them to come together and give land to DLF, right? You studied the master plan. What are the grey areas? Why would developers not be tremendously excited about it, and why are there still so many unanswered questions?
I think primarily because of the unanswered questions, like Kuldeep said, that how will it roll out?
Okay.
Whatever land has already been bought in a private transaction is okay. What happens to the huge balanced land? Will that come under LARR? Will that be a 5-year process? If that is so, what role will the authorities play in planning not only the road infrastructure but the entire services infrastructure? And how much do they really believe in PPP? Do they believe that yes, PPP actually means promoting development of housing of all segments?
Right.
Or is it that put as many obstacles as possible and therefore delay it?
Okay.
So I think the fundamental mindset change in the implementing agencies and the political will that you talked of will make a huge difference. Otherwise, usually since independence, it has been the best policy to create a shortage and keep a shortage.
Keep a shortage.
That's
All
it.
right.
I think we need to go to surpluses now. That's the only way
And
to
Delhi
temper
does
prices.
have land. It,
Oh, yes.
it can become a land surplus city if it wants to, and can provide for reasonably priced homes.
That's it.
As a data point, half of Delhi is not urbanized.
That's it.
So we've got as
and
much...
the figures that I read, okay Kuldeep, hold your thought there, we're going to take a very quick break, because the figures I read are that Delhi is the city which is probably urbanized the most in the country, with 97% of Delhi urbanized. So what are we really talking about? And with so many questions still unanswered, the big question still remains: Delhi Master Plan 2021, is it a vision too big, or is it actually implemented? As Delhi gets ready to vote on 4th December, the big question that we are asking today is, how will the next government make Delhi a more livable city? There is a master plan, there is a vision 2021. There are still a lot of unanswered questions, as we just discussed with our panelists. So let's carry on a little bit more and get deeper into the discussion. It's not just about housing for you and me. It's about housing for the economically weaker segments. It's also about slum rehabilitation. It's also about maybe regularizing the unauthorized colonies. It's a mix and match of a lot of things which have to come together. So, you know, I'm going to toss across to Dr. Rao. Dr. Rao, the agenda looks so noble on paper. Yeah. You will have reservation for EWS segments. You will also probably regularize all unauthorized colonies. Slums will also get, integrated with the urban Delhi that we are talking about. Does it seem too much?
Unless and until you have these provisions, then you have not really made any headway. So I think on paper, these provisions certainly look very noble, but I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and you need to actually implement these. So in order to motivate the developers, I think an additional FAR is being given for 15% of EWS. So I'm not very sure how many developers are going to bite the bullet as far as this additional FAR for the EWS is concerned. But then let's see how it's going to go. I think the key is basically infrastructure being put in place, and unless and until infrastructure is not put in place, none of these things are actually going to take place. But then it's not that this whole policy of PPP and land pooling doesn't have any parallels in the country. If you look at Chhattisgarh in Raipur, this is being done on a very large scale. Similarly, in Gujarat we have PPP and land pooling being done since quite some time now. So it's not that we don't have examples in our country where it's not really worked. It has worked in many places in India, so I don't see any reason why it should not work in Delhi.
Okay, fair enough, Kuldeep. So that's what we're talking about. I mean, it has been done. Delhi is not the first place which is going to do it on the PPP model. Then why are so many questions unanswered?
I think there are two parts to this. Part one is the fact that I think which we talked about a couple of minutes ago, which is that what happens to land which is not given voluntarily into the pool. Will that come under the acquisition bill? We didn't have those issues at that point in time because we didn't have the acquisition bill.
You didn't have last.
So that is part one. Part two is, you know, let's be real. Land in Delhi is expensive. Okay, it is the capital city. So there are multiple uses and economic benefits that can accrue. Land holding is also fragmented. You know, so how are you? And it's a political hot potato. So you have to handle it with care. What may have worked in Gujarat or Chhattisgarh, Raipur, etc. may or may not work here.
Okay.
You know, the other point is that in none of these places where it has worked have you had the intensity and density of development in such a short time frame that is required. You know, so I think each case is different.
Okay.
And there will be issues that will need to get tackled. Are there lessons to be learned? Of course. Can they be transplanted totally? No. You know, that's what I would say.
Ramesh, you know, Certis has already started, is very active in the land pooling business. What is the sense that you're getting? I mean, we talked about, to me it's seeming like a chicken and an egg situation, frankly. You're saying we don't have any clarity on infrastructure, we don't know the land that private developers don't acquire, what will happen to the rest of the land. So how do you go about this process at all?
You know, I have a developer to my left and an investor fund, organized capital, so to say, on my right. So the way they would think definitely is not the way a typical land investor would think. In the first instance, the land is a long-term investment. Nobody who is into purchase of a product, let's say an apartment or a commercial building, typically enters the land business. Land investors are those who have a long-term horizon.
Okay.
And the best yield or optimum yield in land is only when you hold it for a certain number of years, 7+ years on a minimum.
And then you buy it when everything is so uncertain and opaque.
Yes. No, you buy agriculture land, it gets converted to urbanizable land, and then it gets converted into a product.
Correct.
For example, whatever Mr. Talwar's company has done in Gurgaon, they've evolved a township over multiple thousand acres over a period of time.
Right.
So investment into land is not something that's scary or would not happen in the absence of certain policies. The master plan is out, the zonal plans are out, the local area plans are under development at this moment, and of course the minor tenets as and when required will be coming out. But yes, if one has the interest to participate in this story as an investor,
right,
with a clear direction that the maximum yield pan-India across investments is going to be in the NCR market, typically, because Delhi is still a demand-led story. Your own graphics show the demography that is going to be added to Delhi, which is a consuming population. Unlike many other cities we discussed, where you have to draw population from out of town and habitate them, create economic opportunities so that they settle down there, etc.
Okay.
So Delhi is still a good opportunity. Yes, there are grey areas which political will permitting should happen at a much better pace than what has happened over the past many years.
Okay, Rajiv, do you believe that? I mean, there is this obviously a mouth-watering opportunity which is there, but then you also wonder whether it's safe for a retail investor to get into a game like land pooling or the farmhouse investment, big full-page ads that we receive.
I don't think retail investors will get into it. I think
But they are.
No, but what he said rightly,
HNIs.
what Ramesh said rightly is that yes, people may pool in money.
Okay.
With an investment firm, they go into it, but the real test of PPP will be that many players, just like what happened in Gurgaon, where you have, I think it's barely less than maybe 200 to 300. There's enough competition, everyone finds out a way. I think there are lessons to be learned, as Kuldeep said, that yes, infrastructure should be better provided here. Delhi has got a start. The GDP growth in Delhi is very high compared to the rest of the country.
So you're saying that developers will make a beeline for this?
Not developers only.
Okay.
They will be not retail investors, but they will be combined, and let's say an investment.
No, I'm not talking
firms.
about the investors now, Rajiv.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about, you took the example of Gurgaon. My question is, in this public-private participation that we are talking about, the private participation is extremely critical. How excited are developers about this entire Delhi Master Plan 2021 and the beginnings of it, which has been made with land pooling?
Wherever there is a good economic opportunity, people will come in.
Okay.
The authority should allow as many people to come in as is possible, not only to generate competition, but to generate new innovative ideas and thereby populate this huge tract of land which is there. And that is possible only if the authorities have a proactive mindset.
Okay.
If they allow that, yes, there is so much of opportunity, like you said, for all segments. Maybe there is an extra FSI which is being given to affordable housing. And if such opportunities are allowed by the government and by the agencies which implement this act in Delhi, then I think those people who are living in slums, unauthorized colonies, will all move into regular good colonies, and that's what will make housing affordable and also increase competition.
So Kuldeep, my next question is, we keep saying that, now with so much land getting added and new land parcels coming up for development, prices of homes should become affordable. Is that going to happen at all? Because in the next 5 years, you will also see inflation, and you've already seen land prices going up. People know what's happening. These are the zones which have been earmarked. Is it going to remain affordable by the time you see some homes?
I think the short answer is yes, it's possible to be affordable, and I'll tell you why. Number one, there is a lot of land. Number two, the policy intent I think is very good of pooling because it creates a relatively more level playing field. Okay? So a large supply of land means prices remain under check. Pooling and the concept of pooling implemented well should create a level playing field where prices of land don't vary significantly from one developer to another. Location benefits may accrue, and that's a bonus, but you can't control it.
All right.
The large supply and resultant competition, will help create a fair amount of supply that comes into the market, provided infrastructure grows at a healthy pace.
Okay. So there is a caveat that infrastructure has to keep pace, because they are far-flung areas.
Because at the end of the day, demand is there for the mid-end segment. So if you look at, whether you look at 2-bedroom houses in Gurgaon or you look at Noida, and we can talk about price points, the demand is definitely there.
Okay.
The road networks, the trunk lines are there, they need to be expanded. The metro is expanding. For example, the next phase from, Dwarka to Najafgarh, is expanding.
And Najafgarh is one of the
villages
which is
and to berate the point about policy, I just want to make a very quick comment here. We're seeing a lot of interest in the 1 acre country home policy, where there is relatively far greater clarity and where the dependence on government infrastructure is not there. That's why you're seeing it. The interest in the green belt and in the 1 acre policy a year ago was not there.
Okay.
In the last 1 year, as the government has said, okay, you can do 30%, you have to pay extra for 10%, you can do X number of homes, you can do this much height, the development norms are clear.
All right.
So you're seeing action there.
Yeah, I think one point which I'd like to add to this is that we're talking mainly about residential.
Right.
Will this experiment be the same as we had in the 70s when you moved all the rehab colonies on the peripheries of the town? And then you used to have this flushing effect. Going one way or the other, transport network required. DTC used to be under major fire those days. We also thought of a ring railway. Fortunately, it's been overtaken by the metro network. So will we create something what we have seen in Gurgaon, that walk to work culture? That means workplaces are developed nearby. Absolutely. You have mixed development allowed in new areas, but not in existing colonies, like we have shops sprouting up which should be closed down.
Right.
But will we allow offices to come nearby? Will we allow
the
shopping?
plan has mixed use development.
Well,
it in fact talks about it.
The whole concept of transit oriented development and planning around that is great. The challenge of urban India is execution, not planning.
Not planning. Okay. Let me toss across to Dr. Rao. Dr. Rao, tell me, I mean, in terms of affordability of homes, Delhi in most good livable areas has outpriced itself of a middle class family. Do you think that if at all the Vision 2021 does get rolled out as it looks on paper, it will bring down and make homes affordable for a lot of Delhiites?
My fear is that it may not really allow us to provide affordable housing, for the simple reason that already speculation has started, and I think this speculation has already made land very, very expensive, and land is the basic input. And once you pool the land, a substantial portion of the land is going to be taken away for the roads and for the other social amenities and so on and so forth. So what the developer gets actually in return is much, much lesser, maybe 45% or so. Land prices have already started increasing, and I'm afraid ultimately when the whole thing is actually put up, I'm afraid that it's all going to go outside the reach of the common man. That is my fear, and there's really no way in which we can check this, because it's all a question of demand and supply.
Absolutely. So it is determined by the market forces, Ramesh, and it seems to be like a free run for investors at this stage. This party could continue for some time right now. How do you then say that, this is a big thing that we've been debating? Samir is not here, but he says, oh my God, when you have all these developments, prices of homes in Delhi will come down, and even Gurgaon is likely to mellow down because of that.
No, two things. The cost of the final product is not just dependent on the price of land, it will also depend on what are the add-ons to the cost as far as land is concerned.
60% is land. In 1.5 years that I've been doing real estate, the biggest reason I'm told why homes in India are not affordable is because we don't get enough land at the right price.
Fair enough point. But then when you're releasing 58,000 hectares of land in one go, see the prices of, please do not look at the prices in South Delhi versus what is going to come up in Northwest Delhi or Southwest Delhi.
Rohini, and then go on to the new areas. Let's look at Dwarka, and let's say, Gurgaon side of Dwarka, you look at Delhi side of Dwarka and say, okay, these are the two largest parcels. Now, tell me now, will home prices come down? I'm talking about 5 to 7 years from now. Take a regular inflation of 8% and then calculate for me.
When there is only one agency developing Delhi, namely DDA, and then they auction the last the couple of auctions when the base price was 70 lakhs per apartment for 1,100 square feet, then you can look at a thumb number of 7 to 8,000 rupees, which is the prevalent price in say a Rohini or a Dwarka.
Perfect.
But when you have private developers, private investors, institutional investors who look at a cash flow model, they would like to sell their product, albeit on a lower margin, a better product, and then they exit, churn and move to the next one. So I'm not as pessimistic about the pricing as it is, because it is a free market. You have to have a supply which is equivalent or slightly larger than the demand. So when you talk about, when Samir talks about,
I would agree that, at some point of time when supply catches up with the pent up demand, you won't have prices going up. I mean, today the situation you can see in Noida, you can see in Gurgaon, prices have stopped moving up. There's a huge amount of supply.
In Delhi,
why go far?
Why go far then? Everyone from 2008, we were at those peak times in 2006, 7 and 8, and from 2008 we've heard every program on TV and on the air saying, will prices go down? But the fact is, why didn't you take into account that they have gone down?
They have gone down.
Whether it's Mumbai, where supply of office space was in excess of demand, prices crashed.
Absolutely.
So
the best indicator of finding out whether prices are going up or down is to look at velocity of sales. The price can be what it is. It's a little bit like hotel room prices. The rack rate is something, rooms get sold at something.
Absolutely.
So the way to check is how many transactions are happening at that price, and that tells you everything.
Let me make a quick point on this price bit. Since 1981, we at Delhi have regularized 4,300 or more unauthorized colonies, right? If you look at the total land mass, this is more than 125 to 150 square kilometers.
Right.
Now, even today in those unauthorized colonies, the price point of a product sale is 20 lakhs or below. Now, you can't blame Delhi for not having a product in the category where demand lies. The culprit is the supply.
Okay.
If unauthorized colonies can generate that amount of supply and cater to the mass which was looking for a house.
Absolutely.
Now, those three-wheeler drivers, those masses who are not considered by Gurgaon as a clientele are just being accommodated by Delhi in these unauthorized colonies. So the culprit is the supply, not land.
Ease up the supply, and I think that's what we are hoping, that the Delhi Master Plan, by answering all of the unanswered question, by ending that chicken and the egg which came first situation, where who's going to do the job first? Will the developers come first, or the infrastructure will come through the government? All of those things remain unanswered. But there is absolutely no denying that Delhi Master Plan 2021 has got a lot of things right, and implemented, it should ease up the housing supply in the city. Well, elections are also around the corner. We are not going anywhere just now. We'll be back to examine the manifestos of the three leaders in the arena, Congress, BJP and Aam Aadmi, to get our panelists to comment on which one do they seem is workable. December, we all get the right to choose a new government for Delhi. The question is, who do you vote for? We decided to cull out the big points from the three contenders' manifesto which affect your living in Delhi. So let's start with Congress. Very quickly, urban development is their big focus, making Delhi a global city, and for that they say they will augment infrastructure. They will also make NCR a common economic zone. They will create a housing board to tackle EWS and MIG housing and construct about 4 lakh EWS flats, that's for the economically weaker segments, under the JNURUM, which hasn't so far worked very well. And then of course they go on to highlight many of these issues, but making Delhi a knowledge capital of India with more evening colleges, 5 new medical colleges, and the big demand for full statehood. Unified command for better governance is the Congress manifesto. BJP seems so close to the Congress one, we wonder whether they really needed to come out with a separate one. Demand for full statehood, that's the first one, which I think is common to all three, Aam Aadmi Party and BJP and Congress. Again, physical infrastructure, they repeat the same well-mouthed term, creating world-class infrastructure. Energy, making Delhi a power surplus city. Housing, slum-free city with housing for all are some of the BJP manifesto points. The most interesting is the Aam Aadmi Party. They have given us a commitment to passing Delhi Jan Lokpal bill within 15 days of coming to power. That's a tall one. Devolving power directly to people, decisions about development in any locality to be taken by Mohalla Sabhas, payments for any work, roads, pavement, etc. to be released only once the work is approved by Mohalla Sabhas. Demand for full statehood, as I said, is of course common. They do want MCD, DD and Delhi police all directly controlled by Delhi government. And the most important one, Gram Sabhas would be empowered to make decisions regarding Delhi's villages, including extension of Lal Dora. Land acquisition in these villages would be possible only with the permission of the Gram Sabha. Rajiv Talwar, you have to come in here first.
Okay. Yeah, I've been a bureaucrat. I was born and brought up in this city, and I think all of them have the same manifesto.
Not really. The devolving of... See, BJP and Congress have very similar manifestos. But I think the big thing which everybody is discussing and debating, this devolving of power to mohallas and sabhas, is that doable? Will that lead to chaos?
I don't really know.
Work?
I don't really know. I mean, this is... we are a very successful democracy. Elections are a triumph of democracy in a way. But I still don't know whether these will be workable. I think we've had an experiment going on called the Bhagidari system, and RWAs have hopefully come into their own. So It's open.
It could work.
Well, I'm not too sure that it will work. I'm not
Okay.
too sure at all that it will work. But the genius of Indian people is perhaps unknown.
Free water to each household up to 700 liters a day, lowering electricity tariffs by 50%. Now, these are some of the things that we are left wondering on how they are possible. Dr. Rao, come in here. Just you know, let's just focus on the Aam Aadmi Party manifesto. Some of the things, are they possible and are they doable, and will they work in Delhi?
Yeah, well, I've heard all the manifestos. I think they are more or less similar. But you know, the point on devolution is that the 74th Constitution Amendment that has been made that makes this provision for devolution and for grassroots democracy and so on. I think that's a good idea, so that it becomes a more participatory kind of a development, where people actually participate in these mohalla committees and so on, ward committees as they call it in the 74th Constitution Amendment, so that people are more empowered at the grassroots level. But more than that, I think finance is something that is very, very important, because to meet all these promises, to implement all these promises, whether it's water supply, whether it's electricity, whether it's thousands of houses under JNNURM and so on and so forth, you need a hell of a lot of money, number one, and number two, the execution skills. Like someone else said earlier in this program, what is extremely important is implementing all these things. It's very easy for us to make promises, but then do you have the official machinery to implement all these in a very efficient and speedy manner? I think we need to understand the difference between general economic theory and land economics. I think both these are very, very different. Our common sense understanding of economics tells us that when there is a demand, you pump in supply, and then supply will take care of demand and prices are going to fall. But in the case of real estate, that doesn't really happen that way. What actually happens is that supply comes in bits and pieces, number one. And number two, we are talking about immovable property. So you can have a lot of supply available somewhere, but then if it is not connected or whatever, there could be several reasons on account of which that particular supply houses can just remain vacant. And we've seen in JNNURM in many places across the country, not just in Delhi, the houses have been built, but they're lying vacant for the simple reason that you don't have connectivity, and you don't have water, and you don't have several other things.
Okay.
So I think it's a complex game. So it's very difficult to really say whether you know, we'll be able to achieve these or not. Promises are nice.
Okay, fair enough. Promises are nice, but Aam Aadmi Party promises, Ramesh, doable, or Kuldeep?
I would say this. You know, what is possible is you need an integration. For example, he made the point about finance. Planning, you can't devolve planning to a local committee. You definitely need inputs from them. You need to take their considerations into account, and what they can manage locally, give them.
Okay.
But where you need to have an integrated development, for example, water supply, sewerage, you know, those kinds of things, you need not have a command model, but you need to have a participative model.
Okay.
You know, so it's possible to do some things completely devolved, but for many others, you know, you need to have a model that has some control and some broad parameters laid out.
No, I read one thing here, which said that no bills will be passed till you have them cleared by the local Mohalla Sabhas.
That's,
I think that's a little dangerous.
That is very dangerous. Yeah. I would agree. I mean, that's too much democracy and too much
Another point,
participation.
you know, Delhi would be the only state city which will be 100% urbanized once the entire master plan tenets are out in the open, right? So you cannot really pick up points from the Panchayati Raj or local level, you know, management of
or devolvement of power.
Yeah, devolvement of power, and apply it on an urbanized area. So either then, you know, it's in direct conflict with the Bhagidari scheme, it is in conflict with the various other schemes. So Lal Dora, yes, 80% of the people of the village still need to come together to take a call about extension of Lal Dora. There is nothing new that this manifesto
talks about. I agree with you.
But trying to enlarge the scope of the local level, I think
the Gram Sabha
would be counterproductive to the billions of dollars that await investment into Delhi.
Absolutely. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been an extremely interesting discussion ahead of that big election that we are all going to go out and vote for. Dr. Rao, thanks very much for joining in. Well, to all of you, do exercise your right to choose the government for Delhi, and hopefully the next government will just focus a little bit more on the Delhi master plan and make sure that at least it gets rolling out very quickly and work from the government's end also happens. Thanks very much and goodbye.